All right. So this is an interesting story that's just percolating through the internet, and I wanted to make a quick video about it. According to the Debrief.org, an intelligence official has said the U.S. has retrieved craft of non-human origins. Um, this is moving through the skeptic sphere right now. So I wanted to just take a few minutes to go through it, look at the claims, look at the evidence, and see if the evidence presented in this article is worth getting our hopes up for. Um, so buckle up and we'll go through this piece by piece. Um, so, long story short, our gentleman here, David Grusch, a former combat veteran from Afghanistan, who has some pretty good credentials that you can see here, was tied to the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force. Unidentified aerial phenomena is the new buzzword for UFOs in order to get rid of some of the stigma of UFOs and to help sort of rebrand the idea. Um, UFOs, UAPs have become more popular in the last few years due to the prevalence of high definition cameras and a few leaks that have come out that are interesting to look at and cool from a skeptical angle and from a optical illusion angle, but so far there's not been anything identified that has been identified as a non-human craft. So this claim that Grush is making is an interesting one, saying that there are craft that have been retrieved that are of non-human origin. um, there's just one hitch. As you'll see here, the alleged craft he does not provide a great deal of evidence for, and the evidence he does provide is, in my opinion, not enough to support the claim. Um, so, moving forward, um, unidentified anomalous phenomena, unidentified aerial phenomena, UAP, all synonyms for UFOs. So, Grush has said here that partial fragments through and up to intact vehicles have been made for decades, allegedly. Um, I'll just point out that he's making this claim. He is not actually pointing to what these are. Um, Also, this term of exotic origin or unknown origin, one of the big things that people will see and notice when it comes to UFOs is that we don't know what it is often becomes we do know and it's aliens. Or another way that this can sneak in is we're not able to disprove aliens, therefore, they are just as valid as any other explanation. Basically, arguments from ignorance mixed with leaps in logic that are not based on evidence. In fact, here, analysis by who, when, where, based on vehicle morphologies and material science testing. So, vehicle morphology is just a fancy way of saying that the vehicles look alien. I've seen a few concept cars that I would say look pretty alien to me. BMW has made a really interesting roadster sports car that looks sleek and super organic that no other car quite looks like, for instance. Morphology is not evidence of being alien. Material science testing, they don't really give a good example or citation for, so we don't know what that is entailing. Here's one though: the possession of unique atomic arrangements and radiological signatures. This is an interesting claim coming from Grush because unique atomic arrangements and radiological signatures to me is saying that he's claiming that these are new elements that have not been identified or synthesized by humans. This right here, if found and shown, would, in my opinion, be not slam dunk, but an incredibly strong piece of evidence of alien life or technology. Because right now, human scientists are able to create matter up to a certain point. I think we're up to 112, 113 on the periodic table. In theory, there is something called the island of stability where these atoms, these elements cease to break down and become stable, but that is off in the distant realms of the periodic table that we aren't able to reach yet. So if there are these quote unique atomic arrangements and radiological signatures, if that is what I'm interpreting, new elements not known to humans, that would be evidence of some sort of alien or not, or extremely forward, extremely technologically advanced societies making these things and being able to reach the island of stability. So that would not be a slam dunk proof, but it would be very interesting to me. So hopefully he actually substantiates that, but he has not. Um, this all came about as part of a legal complaint which Grusch filed, alleging retaliation. Um, One thing about this is that right away we are seeing that this is a released, potentially disgruntled employee. So we need to be aware that that does mean that we need to ask ourselves, is this someone who's speaking from a place of good faith, or is it someone speaking from a place where he may be seeking to pull down or cause trouble for his former employer who he claims retaliated against him? The evidence should be separated from that complaint. The claims of alien craft should stand on their own regardless of who presents them. But if there is no evidence and if it does not come forward, we have to ask ourselves if Grusch might have been putting forward things in order to mess with his former employer. All right. So Grusch's on the record statements have been cleared for open publication back in April, according to documents provided to the debrief. So what he said has been shared and is open. Right away, this means that we're dealing with the government not being scared of what he says, which signals that they may not believe him, may not trust him. The more conspiracy minded among you may say, oh, well, of course they would, because they want to try to make him look like a crank. Okay. But if he's right, then he's right, and his evidence will be able to show that. Here's the nutshell of his actual issue. Um, Basically, defense appropriations. And I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to delve into the nitty gritty of that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through this article and look for the logical questions and the evidence questions that we can dig into. Um, so whether or not UAPs are worth time and effort being researched by the government, honestly, I'm not going to make that determination because that's a value judgment outside my realm. Um, if they find something great, if they don't find anything, well, eventually we can say it's not worth our time. Right here, I'm going to point out that they have this quote from Carl Nell, a retired Army colonel who describes Grusch as beyond reproach. That's wonderful. Grusch is a good person. He's a great guy. He's really nice. That doesn't mean that he's right when he says that the U.S. military has intact non human crafts. Christopher Mellon, quoted here, spent nearly two decades in the intelligence community, gave this quote here, mentioning a number of well placed current and former officials who have shared detailed information with him, Christopher Mellon, regarding the alleged program. Wonderful. Where's the evidence for that, though? He claims that he's been told about governing documents and the location where a craft was abandoned and recovered. This would be literally the greatest find in the history of humanity, but it is, quote, a delicate matter to get this potentially explosive information into the right hands. So, right away, we have conspiracies being used to describe and explain why these things have been covered up and have not seen the light of day, because it's a delicate matter, because it's potentially explosive. Again, we're talking about what should be the biggest find in in the history of humanity being covered up because people are scared. Not to say that that's totally unwarranted, but why wouldn't you still push and get your evidence out there in front of people? They bring up another person, Jonathan Gray, who claims that non-human intelligence phenomenon is real. We're not alone. That's wonderful. Where's Gray's evidence? Again, what we have here is a lot of people making claims, but no evidence being presented. We need to have actual evidence. Even the claims of evidence existing are unsubstantiated from Mellon. Gray said retrievals of this kind are not limited to the United States. It's a global phenomenon. This actually points me to think that they are not telling the truth and that this is not happening. They are incorrect, because if these retrievals are happening across the more than the United States, if they are truly global, then we would have Russia, China, India, European countries, African nations, all of them would be subject to these retrievals, and someone would make the announcement. Someone would want to take the credibility and take credit for being the first country to prove aliens exist. Someone would want to do that. That no country in the world would announce that they've retrieved an alien craft boggles the mind and defies the wildest imagination. Here, the article mentions Grusch having multiple years in the Air Force, numerous awards. That's all wonderful, but ultimately it's being used to imply that because of his awards, we can trust him and that he's right. That is not a valid logical argument, and is notable only in that it makes him a good person. However, um, this part of the article, in the middle section, there was a performance report where Grusch's intelligence work was described. Here's where we get into some interesting things that get a little convoluted, but make us see where Grusch might be coming from. Excuse me. So he was considered to be adept at his work. He was considered to be innovative, give actionable results. So he's a good worker, but that doesn't mean that he's right here. Here is the crux of Grusch's complaint with the government. He said there were legacy programs that have been concealed and hidden about UAP activities in conventional secret access programs without appropriate reporting to various oversight authorities. This is a completely different claim from the idea that there are UAPs and UFOs that are of extraterrestrial, non human origins. And this is a claim that, in my humble opinion, has much more basis in reality, probably, when we consider that so far, no non human intelligence has ever been found. Searching and considering UAPs and UFOs as alien is so far a unnecessary expenditure. Now, does that mean that there aren't aliens? No. But if we're going around looking for something, constantly not finding it, and still pumping millions of dollars into it, is that really the best use of our money? Again, that's a value judgment. But if Grusch eventually came around and said, you know what, I don't think it is, I think that we're wasting money, going to oversight authorities would be the right first step for him. In particular, this quote right here has been making its rounds through the skeptic sphere. 2022, Grusch provided Congress with hours of recorded classified information transcribed into hundreds of pages, which include specific data about the materials recovery program. Some people that I have seen online have claimed that this is saying that he provided evidence to Congress about the recovered craft. However, we should be careful to note that this is saying that he talked about the program with Congress. This is not him talking about actual material recovery. So he is able to tell Congress that the program investigating certain things exists, but that is not the same as saying that the program has found non human origin materials. So this is a very careful line to be mindful of and that we should explore with people. In fact, this very next line, Congress has not been provided with any physical materials related to wreckage or other non human objects. So, again, Congress has not actually been provided any materials. So, anyone claiming that he has provided materials, the Debrief's own article disputes that. Grusch claimed that craft recovery operations are ongoing at various levels, and he knows specific individuals, current and former, who are involved. This is crucially important. He is claiming that individual people came to him and told him about what's happening, and that they described illegal contracting against acquisition regulations and suppression of information. This is crucial information to keep in mind because it goes back to his original complaint that there's a failure of oversight. So that is what that failure of oversight report and whistleblowing was his original report. Now that he's been fired or asked to resign, he's coming forward with these claims of alien intelligences. Again, that doesn't mean that he's lying, but we do have to hold him to support his claims with evidence. And I'll even say, if this is happening, then that needs to be extremely carefully looked at and taken down by the government. Here we have a whole paragraph saying that Grusch is a nice guy. Again, he may be the greatest guy on the planet, but that doesn't mean that he is correct in his claims. He remains well supported. Numerous sources have vouched for his credibility. That is fantastic. I can have a dozen people tell you that I am the greatest person to walk this earth if I want, but that doesn't mean a hill of beans if I'm not able to give evidence to it. The article then goes into this information about a performance evaluation where Grusch and his work with Laura Potter, Deputy Chief of Staff for the Intelligence Headquarters at the Department of the Army. God, that's a mouthful. Described him as an officer with the strongest moral compass. Again, that's fantastic. That does not mean that he is nailing it or that he's completely right here. If anything, and this is my personal conjecture, I would presume that a person with a strong moral compass who sees things being misused and sees misappropriation of funds might be like, how can I get this out there in the way that is most incredible and gets the most eyes on it? And when you're talking about UAPs or UFOs, then you have an easy audience to pull in of people who are going to be very thoughtful and very quick to evaluate the evidence available to them. I'm not saying that's what he did, but it seems like a smart strategic move if he thought of it. They bring in this May 22 disclosure of urgent concerns complaint of reprisal, basically meaning that Grusch said that after he tried to tell people about what was going on, he was retaliated against and then pushed out of his work. Claims that he had direct knowledge of UAP related classified information withheld by Congress by elements of the intelligence community to thwart legitimate congressional oversight of the UAP program. This is a very interesting claim for me. So, my doctoral research is on conspiracy thinking. Part of that deals with the um, definition of a conspiracy. In short, a conspiracy involves a secret agreement by a group of people with a malevolent or illegal goal. Those are the major parts of a conspiracy. This has all the parts of a conspiracy right there. We have these secret elements purposely and intentionally thwarting legitimate or legal congressional oversight. Now, let's suppose that this is true and that he's telling the truth here. That does not mean that there are actual UAPs that are from non human origins, but it is notable because it means that we now have a man who has a strong moral compass who is trying to get the word out about misdoings in the government. So, again, could this be a man who is simply trying to get the word out and wants to make sure his cries aren't falling on deaf ears? I don't know, but it seems like a smart move on his part if that's the case. All testimony he provided was under oath. That's another thing to keep in mind. His statements about the lack of oversight were under oath, were his statements about the non human origins of craft under oath. So far, I haven't seen that language, but I also haven't looked for it. Moving forward, Grusch then supposedly suffered months of retaliation or reprisals related to his disclosure of this misconduct. So again, he's being retaliated against and reprised against for disclosing lack of oversight and mismanagement, not UAP or alien contact. Um, so we have this man who has right to be angry, has a strong bellus causae uh, when dealing with injustice, who's then pushed out of a job that he loves and has been doing for the better part of 2 decades. Moving forward through the article, we have a lot of conjecture about the historical programs, the retrieval and study of exotic materials, things that quote should no longer remain a secret. However, even the people touting these findings are not saying that they know it's aliens. And even here, Gray says any uh, any number higher than zero in this category represents an undeniably significant statistical percentage. That is a very convoluted way, a very convoluted, very carefully worded way of saying that we can't prove this is aliens, but statistically we think that they are. That is a dangerous logical trap to fall into. It is ultimately a very carefully thought out argument from ignorance where they are saying we do not know. It is not impossible that these are aliens. Therefore, we are thinking that this could be aliens, and it is statistically likely they are aliens. Those are leaps of logic which we cannot actually make. It might be aliens, or we don't know, therefore it might be aliens, does not equate to we know and it's aliens. The United States Air Force being less than forthcoming, totally on board with that. We need to have more transparency in government. I work for the government. I think that everything should be open that isn't privacy based. The article then goes into um, a few other um, issues. They start quoting Gray more and more because at this point, the article, in my opinion, has devolved and moved away from Grusch and his story and is more talking about the people who are claiming they're aliens and that we've made contact or found their craft. Um, In this case, Gray and Mellon are two people they're going to in order to support their use of the plural intelligence officials in their headline. They are not innately tied together and they are not saying the same themes except in broad generalities. So even the headline has some issues in terms of using the phrase intelligence officials. So right here, Gray is again jumping to this very oxymoronic statement. Accurately identify the out of this world nature, performance, and design of these anomalous machines, which are then determined not to be of earthly origin. That is an incredibly interesting phrasing because so far there have been no identified, there have been no UFOs or unidentified aerial phenomena that have since been identified as being of alien origin. There have been ones that are not of earthly origin, meteors, Venus, Jupiter, comets, things like that, but we have yet to find non human crafts as the identification. So, this statement that we have observed and accurately identified themes is, I will say it's very strongly, it is groundless and baseless. That has not happened yet. There has been no identification of a UFO where the identification has resulted in alien craft being the answer. I relieve my soapbox and step off of it at this point. Um, Mellon here reminds us very well that this is an oversight challenge, and that the classified briefings here are not necessarily about alien materials. They are actually about real world scenarios and historical examples with need to know bases for the programs themselves. So, just to be super clear, yes, there are secrets being discussed. Yes, there are people discussing secrets. They are not discussing aliens, though. They are discussing the programs that are looking for and at unidentified aerial phenomena and UFOs. That is a very fine detail, but as skeptics, we have to be aware of the difference between this is a secret because we don't want people to know what we're talking about, and this is a secret, therefore aliens. We cannot make that logical leap. This is talking about legislation, asking for reporting on certain things, but even if the government said you have to report on all materials and research and development of UAPs, again, we've never identified any of them as something non-prosaic, non-human in origin, unless it's an astronomical body. So legislators can demand all they want, they will not actually receive an alien spacecraft. The article closes with a discussion of Dr. Gary Nolan, Department of Pathology at Stanford. Um, I'm not going to knock Dr. Nolan, and he has experience with some exotic materials. However, pathology is not going to be astronomy. It's not going to be discussing the logical fallacies that UFOs go into. You can be a wonderful scientist and still have a sacred cow or have a skeptical blind spot. Um, so, in terms of material sciences, um, a pathologist, he very well may have experience with material sciences, but I would not go to him for a lot of material sciences themes unless I learn more about him. He makes a great point about silicon and germanium, um, and how integrated circuits changed so many things in our lives. And that's true. Technology can advance rapidly with just small samples of weird materials. Um, but this claim, what's represented here could be hundreds of technology revolutions ahead of us. That is a huge leap. We don't even have the technology to look at, and he's claiming it could be hundreds of technology revolutions ahead. That leap is not based in evidence, and therefore we can't say it. We cannot say, oh, yes, aliens are incredibly advanced. They are more advanced than us. They're smarter than us. They're better than us. We cannot discuss anything about aliens until we have aliens to discuss. Anything else is premature at best and could be all sorts of problematic at worst. I love this paragraph and the idea that witnesses and whistleblower legislation forbids retaliation. Um, that should be commonplace, in my humble opinion. But the article really does show it here. Like, this is the big crux of the issue. David Grusch marks a crucial test of these new whistleblower protections and their ability to protect future whistleblowers who decide to come forward. While secrets are necessary, there are times that the secrets need to be let out or where people need to be informed of what's going on because it is not being done in a good way. Now, does that mean that there are aliens out there? No, not at all. It does mean that we need to protect people and make sure they're safe. So, Jonathan Gray, I have to uh, disagree with your statement. I don't think it's no longer necessary. I don't think there's any advanced technologies derived from non human intelligences. Those have not been found or evidenced. Um, the whistleblowers here are not being retaliated against because they said these things exist. Grusch is being retaliated against allegedly because he brought up oversight concerns, not because of his claims about materials. That is a very different, very new thing that has happened and come out since he left the government. There's also, in terms of the conspiracy, that Gray notes that the hypothesis that the United States alone has bullied other nations for nearly a century continues to prevail. That is ridiculous. I will point out that we had this whole thing called the Cold War, and that there were multiple wars, and that there have been decades of competition, the space race. Any other country, the USSR or China, if either of them could have claimed contact with aliens, I am certain they would have. Um, the United States bullying the USSR into silence over alien contact or alien craft is a ridiculous position to take. And I think Jonathan Gray is completely incorrect there. Um, I will say Grusch has a wonderful point here. The arms race, the military industrial complex, um, continuing in secrecy, I think is incredibly important for us to know where our dollars are going as citizens. And I think it's incredibly important that people be aware of what the government is doing so that we can hold our representatives accountable in elections. Um, in terms of his closing line, an ontological shock sociologically, I find that combination of words intriguing. Um, those are some impressive words. Basically, that's a big way of saying a reality check. I don't know why Grusch decided to go with a more complicated way of saying he wants this to be a reality check to unite issues for nations and reassess priorities. But that's how he phrased reality check, and I'm going to steal it and use it. Hopefully, he doesn't mind. An ontological shock. Anyways, This article was released earlier today on the Debrief. It's been posted on Reddit a few times. I've seen it go around Facebook in some debunking and skeptical circles. So I just wanted to get some thoughts out there to give some context and point out some of the arguments they make. Um, I'm by no means saying that this is the final word on the topic. I'll probably do some more information deep dives as we go, and as new information comes forward. Ideally, Grusch will actually provide evidence that we can dig into, and when he does, I will be here to break it down and look at it and evaluate it and really dig in. So once again, I'm Dr. Ben Wentworth, and I appreciate you being here, and I look forward to hearing your comments here or on my blog, conspiracythinking.com. Thank you all, and have a good night.